The harsh truth. When men understand this, the dating game is over. I am going to start with a number. 77%. 77% of men have experienced anxiety and depression within a relationship, but 40% of them have never told anyone, not because they are not hurting, but because they are ashamed to admit that they are hurting. And today I am going to talk about why that happens. Not to make you feel better, but to help you see the truth clearly. 99% of men are living inside a cage. That cage has no lock, no walls, but they do not step out because they are waiting for someone to give them permission. I call this the permission system, and it is quietly destroying your sense of self, one day at a time. At the end of this video, I will share the psychological concept that can help you break out of that cage for good. But first, let us look straight in the mirror. A quick note before we continue. Everything I share today is grounded in behavioral psychology and the principles of healthy attraction. This is not advice for manipulating or controlling anyone. The only goal here is to help you reclaim your autonomy and your mental well-being. If you are looking for ways to harm someone, please turn this off. But if you want to understand why you keep getting stuck, stay with me. There are 4 types of men who are quietly sabotaging themselves in relationships. I have seen all 4, many times. And you may recognize yourself in one of them. The first type, the Unlimited Attention Dispenser. This is the man who is always available, always responsive, always ready. She posts a photo on social media at 11 at night. He likes it within 30 seconds. She sends a message at 2 in the morning. He replies instantly. It sounds considerate. It sounds caring. But in reality, he is undermining himself. Think about basic economics. When supply is unlimited, value drops to 0. Your attention is the most valuable currency in any relationship. When you give it away freely, without conditions, without discernment, it loses its value immediately. Not because she is calculating, not because she is unkind, but because the human brain is wired to assign value based on scarcity. What is easily obtained is rarely treasured. This is a law of human nature. There are no exceptions. You do not need to become cold or hard to reach, but you do need to learn to guard your attention like the genuine treasure it is. Ask yourself honestly, are you giving your attention in a way that is worthy of you? Or are you scattering it around like flyers on a street corner? The second type, the emotional puppet. This is the man whose emotional state is entirely determined by her behavior. When she is happy, he is happy. When she goes cold, he panics. When she does not reply for 2 hours, he starts running through every possible scenario in his head. I want to say this to you directly. Women do not do this because they are cruel. They do it unconsciously. And they do it as a way of measuring. Psychologist John Gottman calls this the process of testing a partner's emotional stability. When you react to every small shift with a full emotional storm, you are already answering that test loud and clear. Your answer is, I am not stable. And a man who is not emotionally stable cannot be a steady foundation for anyone. This does not mean you should become someone without feelings. Having emotions is human. Managing them is what builds character. Composure is not the absence of emotion. Composure is the ability to feel everything without letting it drive your behavior. That is real strength. The third type, the Prisoner of Scarcity. This is the man who believes she is the only one, that if he loses her, everything is over. He accepts things he should never accept. Disrespect, inconsistency, empty promises. He sees all of it, but he stays, because he is more afraid of being alone than he is of being hurt. And that fear turns him into a hostage inside his own relationship. Let me be direct with you. No one can be your only option if you have not yet invested in yourself. When you are building something meaningful, developing your skills, taking care of your health, living with purpose, you naturally begin to encounter more interesting people. Not because you are looking for a replacement, but because a man of genuine value naturally attracts more possibilities. And when you have more possibilities, the fear of losing any one particular person fades. A prisoner is not someone who has no key. A prisoner is someone who has the key, but has forgotten they are holding it. The fourth type. The man who confuses love with submission. This is the type I see most often in mature men. They have invested deeply. Time, money, emotion, sacrifice. And they believe that kind of loyalty will be returned in equal measure. They believe love is unconditional. And here is what I have to say directly, even though it is hard to hear. In reality, most relationships operate on conditional love. That does not mean the love is not real. It means that lasting love is built on mutual respect and the genuine value both people bring. When you sacrifice without boundaries, you are not loving. You are bargaining. And when the other person does not reciprocate, the collapse you experience is not just heartbreak. It is a complete shattering of your own sense of identity. Watch what people do, not what they say. Someone who is truly worthy of your devotion will not need you to ask for respect. They will give it to you naturally. Now, let me bring in the science. In 1954, psychologist Julian introduced a concept called locus of control. He divided people into two groups. The first group has an internal locus of control. They believe the outcomes of their lives come from their own decisions and actions. The second group has an external locus of control. They believe their lives are shaped by other people, by circumstances, or by luck. Rotter's research across multiple decades showed that people with an internal locus of control have better mental health, greater professional success, and more lasting relationships. Now apply that to romantic life. When you are constantly waiting for her approval to feel okay about yourself, you are placing the control center of your life outside of yourself. You are saying, "I am fine," when she tells me I am fine. And that turns you into an emotional dependent, regardless of whether she loves you or not. There is another theory I want to mention. Self-determination theory, developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. They demonstrated that for optimal mental health, human beings need three fundamental needs to be met. Autonomy. You feel like you are genuinely choosing your own life. Competence. You feel like you are growing and that you have real value. Relatedness. You feel genuinely connected to others. These three pillars must stay in balance. When you become overly dependent on one person's approval, the first pillar collapses. Autonomy disappears. And when autonomy disappears, your entire psychological foundation begins to shake. You are no longer yourself. You become the version of yourself that the other person wants to see. And that version cannot attract anyone in a lasting way. Now, I want to talk about the biggest trap of all, the permission system. I mentioned it at the beginning of this video, and now I want to explain what it actually is. This system was not installed in you by anyone deliberately. It was built during childhood, layer by layer. The first layer. Behave well to earn praise. The second layer. Hold yourself back so others feel comfortable. The third layer. Your personal desires are only valid when others approve of them. When these layers get applied to romantic relationships, the result is a man who begins to shrink. He gives up his interests because she does not like them. He stops seeing his friends because she feels left behind. He changes his opinions because he does not want conflict. And day by day, month by month, he becomes smaller. He calls this love. But in reality, it is a transaction, trading pieces of himself for acceptance. And when the other person one day stops approving, he does not just lose the relationship, he loses himself. Because he had already lost himself long before that moment. So, how do you get out of this? I do not have a magic formula, but I have 4 practical steps. The first step. Set hard boundaries. Not boundaries to punish anyone else, but boundaries to protect yourself. Sit down and write out 3 things you will absolutely not compromise on in any relationship. It might be honesty. It might be having your time respected. It might be the right to keep the friendships that matter to you. When you know your boundaries clearly, you no longer have to make decisions in emotional moments. You just look at that list. The second step. Invest in your personal kingdom. Set aside at least 5 hours every week for things that belong to you alone. Work out. Learn a new skill. Get your finances in better order. These activities have nothing to do with the other person. They have everything to do with you. And when you invest in yourself, you naturally become more valuable, not to impress anyone, but because it is simply true. The third step. Practice deliberate silence. The next time you face conflict or are treated with disrespect, do not explain yourself. Do not argue. Do not plead. Stay silent, not because you are weak, but because you have nothing to prove. The calm silence of a self-possessed man carries more weight than any argument. The fourth step. Build a network of strong male connections. This is something many middle-aged men overlook entirely. When you depend completely on one woman for your emotional support, you are putting far too much pressure on a single relationship, and that suffocates both of you. Seek out men of genuine character to connect with. Men who are living with purpose, with standards, with backbone. Your community shapes who you become. And now, here is the concept I promised to share at the end. Individuation. This is a concept introduced by psychologist Carl Jung. Individuation is the process of becoming fully and completely yourself. Not the version your family wanted, not the version society expects, not the version your partner is hoping for, but the most original, most authentic version of who you actually are. Jung called this the journey toward becoming a whole individual. And what is fascinating is that when you reach that state, approval from the outside is no longer something you need, not because you stop caring about people, but because you no longer need others to tell you who you are. This is the difference between a man who is truly living and a man who is merely existing. The man who is merely existing asks, "Does she like me?" The man who is truly living asks, "Does this relationship help me become a better person?" I will close with this. Power is never given to you. It is claimed by the person who walks into a room as if they have always belonged there. A man of true character does not walk into a room wondering whether he is welcome. He walks in and brings his own presence with him. That is not arrogance. That is self-possession. And self-possession, more than anything else, is what creates lasting and genuine attraction. So the question I leave with you today is this. If you sit down and honestly look at the decisions you have made in your most recent relationship, are you acting like a man with an internal locus of control, or are you still waiting for someone to give you permission to be yourself? If this video made you stop and think, leave a comment below saying, "I choose strength." I want to know where you are in this journey. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Femina Mind so you do not miss what comes next. We are going to keep going deeper into the truths that very few people are willing to say out loud. See you in the next video.